this form shall rest beneath the sun. I'll drop that cross of self-denial and enter in my home above. I'm going home to see my Savior. I'm going home, no more to roam. I am just going over Jordan. I am just going home. I'm going home to see my Savior. I'm going home, no more to roam. I am just going over Jordan. I am just going over home.
Yeah.
My father was a Bangor tiger, one of the old originals. And it's about him that most of my stories tend to be about. But my mother, she was as much a hellion, if not more so. And before I go boasting, it's best if I clarify my lineage on both sides. Now, as I said, my father was a Bangor tiger, one of those famed loggers from the dark state of Maine. He'd come from Wales, following his best friend who had, crazily enough, married the sister of my mother. After 5 years of logging, my mother's sister, my aunt, she had 3 children and a household that was never quiet. My mother's house, instead, was empty. And she grew sad. And she grew lonely. Her husband, my father, told her to wait and to pray for the bounty of the Lord. But in those hard early days of hunger and of sickness, of early frosts and dry springs and terrible accidents in the woods, it was often felt by the inhabitants of Bangor, Maine, that the eyes of God were elsewhere. And my mother, she grew impatient. You see, at that time, there's no parts of these woods that have been cut since the beginning of things, where the old trees grow so close together that the walk into the woods was like walking into a cave. So dark and quiet it was. And it was rumored that in those dark woods, a handsome man in black walked about. Sometimes, men would go out looking for him. They come back with the most curious things. Abel King Clade, he came back with this coal that never burned out. And he used that coal to light his stove every morning for 14 years. Until it burned down his house. Danny Brennan came back with a piglet that mumbled something that sounded like words. So he raised it into a hog. But one day, he left that gate open and the pig got out and ate the child. Danny Brennan came back with a seedling that grew into a tree that fed off of lightning. And when it fruited, it gave off these little cherries that tasted like rust. Some men, they come back with this black powder that may cure an infection, stop arthritis, or drive a man mad. Some men never came back at all. One night, the moon was full and heavy in the sky, and my mother walked alone into the dark woods. She wore her husband's cork boots, and she brought her husband's axe, and she took a lightning bug and a matchbox, just for luck. Just into the woods, the moon faded to almost nothing. She hadn't walked far in that darkness when she came across the handsome man who spoke to her and called her by name. She told this man that she had come to ask a favor, and the man grinned a grin of perfect white teeth and asked my mother what she wanted. My mother wanted a son. She wanted a son more than she wanted to live. So she challenged this man to a contest. A woodcutting contest. She wagered her soul that in an hour she could cut down the most trees, and when the handsome man pulled an axe from thin air, she asked if they may not switch axes, being that she is disadvantaged for being a woman. The handsome man, he just smiled, handed her the magic axe. This axe gave my mother a strength that she could not believe. And when the handsome man flipped an hourglass filled with sand, she found it only took her a few swings to cut down even the thickest of trees. She would swing the axe no heavier in her hand than a wooden spoon, and with a thud, the axe would sink into the tree as though it was made of wax. But when she glanced at the handsome man in black, she saw that he need only hit the tree once. And then he would whisper a word into the crack, and the tree would fall down at his command. At the end of this hour, my mother had cut down 17 trees. But the man in black cut down 19, and he walked towards her with a grin on his face. But my mother stopped him and said she did not trust in his work. That in whispering to these trees, he might have just put them to sleep. She would need to come back tomorrow morning and make sure they were still on the ground. To trust that either one. The man in black winked at her and said he'd be back tomorrow night to collect. And then he disappeared into the shadow of the tree. My mother wasted no time at all. She went back to the town, she woke up her sister, and together they stole 4 mules from the lumber stockyard, and they stole 4 50-pound bags of cement. They went back to that clearing where my mother had played against the handsome man. They worked all night, setting up those rigs, coaxing those oxen, laying the dried cement. And when they returned the oxen back to that company pen, that sun was close to rising. The next night, she returned back to the clearing, and the man in black was there waiting for her. She pointed out to him that 3 of his trees were now standing, and as far as she could tell, he had only cut down 16. The man in black walked over to one of those trees that he had cut down, and my mother and her sister had raised back up. And he touched that dried cement that held that tree upright. He grinned. He said that for winning, my mother would get the son that she wanted. For outsmarting him, she would get to keep the magic axe. And in saying this, he once again pulled it from thin air and handed it to her. But for cheating, her son would have more of the devil in him than she would like. And then he told her to run from that forest, for these dark woods are not safe for anyone at this time of night. She returned to her husband. Her belly swelled up, and sometime later, I came screaming into this world. So when I tell you boys that I have a cold furnace for a heart, I have venom for a gaze, there's hellbent to my arm, and that there's devilry on my mind. No, I'm not boasting, but simply pleasing my mother, who once outsmarted the devil himself, and raised me to tell no lies.
We are two mariners, a ship's sole survivors, in this belly of a whale. Its ribs are ceiling beams, its guts are carpeting. I guess we have some time to kill. You may not remember me, I was a child of 3, and you were a lad of 18. But I remember you, and I will relate to you just how our histories in a way. Oh, at the time you were a rake and a roustabout, spending all your money on the horses and hounds. You had a charming air, all cheap and debonair, my widowed mother found so sweet. And so she took you in, her sheets still warm with him, now filled with filth and foul disease. As time wore on, you proved a dead-ridden, drunken mess, leaving my mother a poor, consumptive wretch. And then you disappeared, your gambling arrears, the only thing you left behind. And then a magistrate reclaimed our small estates, and my poor mother lost her mind. And one day in spring, my dear sweet mother died. But before she did, I took her hand as she dying cried.
Find him, tie him to a pole and break his fingers, splinters, drag him to a hole until he wakes up naked, crying at the ceiling of his grave.
It took me 15 years to swallow all my tears amongst the urchins in the streets, until a priory took pity and hired me to keep their vestries nice and neat. Oh, but never once in the employ of these holy men did I ever once turn my mind from the thought of revenge. One night I overheard the prior exchanging words with the penitent whaler from the sea, the captain of a ship who matched you toe to tip was known for wanton cruelty. The following day I shipped to sea with a privateer, and in the whistle of the wind I could almost hear as you sail across the sea. Always your mother will watch over you as you finish this wicked deed. And then that fateful night, we had you in our sights. After 20 months at sea, the starboard flank of me, I was getting my muskets clean when came a rumbling from the deep. The ocean shook, the sky went black, and the captain wailed. As before us grew the angry jaws of a giant whale! Don't know how I survived. Whole crew was chewed alive. I must have slipped between its teeth. But oh, what providence, what divine intelligence, that you should survive as well as me. It gives my heart great joy to see your eyes fill with so lean in close, and I'll whisper the last words you'll ever hear.